When you sit in silence, when the running inside you and outside you finally stops, something begins to unfold that most of us never dare to face. Silence is not a hole, not a blank space, not a dead pause between sounds. Silence is alive. It breathes. It carries a weight that cannot be measured, and it opens a door to an encounter with yourself that is both frightening and liberating. From the first years of childhood, the world teaches us to run away from silence. Parents fill a child's room with background music to soothe them. Schools replace stillness with constant activity. As adults, we leave televisions humming, radios playing, headphones pressed to our ears, notifications flashing every minute. Everything is designed to keep silence at a distance, as if silence were dangerous. And perhaps it is, because silence has the power to show you the truth. Think for a moment. Have you ever tried to sit in a quiet room, with nothing on, no distractions, and felt that sudden itch to move, that unbearable urge to grab your phone, to turn something on, to escape? That impulse is not just boredom. It is fear. Fear of what might surface when the noise finally fades. We resist because we know, even if unconsciously, that silence brings us face to face with ourselves. And often we are not prepared for that meeting. But what happens if you stay? What happens if, against all resistance, you do not give in? At first, silence feels hostile. Your mind becomes even louder. Thoughts race, memories scream, anxieties press harder. It feels as though silence is magnifying the chaos inside. But wait a little longer. If you endure this storm without escaping, something begins to shift. The storm quiets. The waves settle. And for the first time in a long time, you notice your own breathing, the rhythm of your body, the simple pulse of being alive. Silence becomes space. Space where thoughts can breathe, where emotions can stretch, where the inner landscape takes form. And within this space, something appears. Not something you can describe in words, but something undeniable. A presence greater than your ego, greater than your fears, greater than your ambitions. A presence that does not come from outside, but from within, waiting all along. This is the secret silence carries. The noise of life is only surface. The constant chatter of the mind, the endless striving, the comparisons, the fears. All of it is a thin crust covering a vast depth. Life is not defined by noise. Beneath it runs a deep, steady current that has always been there. But we ignore it. We cling to noise because it shields us from the truth. And what is that truth? That you are not only your thoughts. You are not the sum of your achievements or your failures. You are not the stories you tell yourself. Beyond all of that, there is something unchanging, something that observes, something that remains. When you enter silence, you feel it. A consciousness behind every thought, a presence untouched by change. To the ego, this discovery is terrifying because it means the ego is not the master. But to the soul, it is liberation. Yet silence does not only reveal light, it also reveals shadow. It draws out the pain you buried, the emptiness you cover, with distractions, the contradictions you avoid. That is why many people run. Because silence forces honesty. It unmasks the lies we tell ourselves, that our busyness is meaningful, that our desires are noble, that our laughter always reflects joy. Silence strips this away. And in that stripping, there is both terror and healing. Only when you see what you truly are and transformation begin. But here lies the paradox. Silence is not empty. Silence is full of presence, full of life, full of connection. Think of those rare moments when silence felt complete. Standing under a sky of stars, hearing the ocean crash against rocks, holding the hand of someone you love without words. In those moments, silence was not absence, it was fullness, a wholeness that needed no explanation. This is philosophy at its root. Not a theory, not an argument, not a debate. Philosophy begins in silence. I have told my students, thinking without silence is like speaking without breathing, without pause, without stillness. No word has weight. No thought has depth. Silence is the soil from which truth grows. And so I ask you, could it be that the constant noise around you, the endless news, the chatter of social media, the constant music in your ears, is only a shield against the silence you fear? And if what you fear most is exactly what could set you free, what then? Silence makes no demands. It does not require a religion, a ritual, a belief. It only requires courage. Courage to stop. Courage to listen. Courage to feel. And this courage, once awakened, begins to change everything. Because silence is not outside of you. It has been waiting inside you all along. The true power of silence is not in calming your stress, though it will. It is not in resting your mind, though it does that too. The real power of silence is in transforming the way you live, the way you see, the way you exist. When you discover that within you there is something unshaken, something steady, something beyond the constant storm of thoughts and emotions, you discover freedom. It is like finding home for the first time. Picture your mind as a river in flood. On the surface, the water churns with waves, rapids, whirlpools, chaos. That is our usual state. Constant reaction, restless movement. But if you dive beneath the surface, you find something different. At the bottom, the water flows quietly, steadily, without resistance. That depth is silence. It is always there, even when the surface rages. And it is in that depth that clarity is born, compassion awakens, creativity appears. Everything you chase in the outer world already exists in the silence within. This is why every spiritual tradition returns to silence. Jesus withdrew to the desert. Buddha sat unmoving under the fig tree, until silence opened enlightenment. The mystics of the West spoke of the silence of the heart. Silence is the thread that binds wisdom across centuries and cultures. Because truth reveals itself not in arguments, but in the stillness of direct experience. And yet, look at our society. It is built to escape silence. Cities roar, screens flicker, voices shout from every direction. We keep ourselves occupied, distracted, overwhelmed. Why? Because if we stopped, even for a moment, if we allowed silence to take hold, we might begin to question. And when a human being begins to question, the structures of illusion tremble. That is the revolutionary power of silence. It is not only personal, it is collective. It unmasks falsehood. It dismantles illusions. It shows that much of what we call success is vanity. That much of what we call progress is restless haste. That much of what we call identity is only a mask. Silence tears masks away and confronts us with what is essential. But silence is not only destruction, it is reconciliation. Because in the same breath that it reveals emptiness, it reveals fullness. It shows us we are not isolated, not separate. We belong. We feel the tree as part of ourselves, the stranger as an extension of our being. Silence dissolves boundaries and heals the divisions that split us. This is the beauty. When silence takes root, compassion is born naturally. Not forced, not fabricated, but real. You see in the other the same fragility that exists in you, and you see the same light as well. And this recognition changes how you act, how you love, even how you suffer. Suffering no longer feels like a private punishment. It becomes part of a shared mystery. And in that mystery, there is strength. So I ask again, what if silence were the missing key to humanity's deepest wounds? What if violence comes from the inability to hear, corruption from the inability to pause desire, egoism from the inability to rest the self? Imagine leaders who sit in silence before decisions. Imagine schools that teach not only numbers and history, but also the practice of stopping, of listening, of breathing. Imagine relationships where silence is not awkward, but sacred. Would not the world change more in one generation of silence than in centuries of speeches? Because silence does not convince by argument. It does not impose by law. It transforms by presence. Will you continue fleeing from silence, chasing noise that never satisfies? Or will you sit, here and now, and listen? Silence has always been available, in every place, at every time. What is missing is not the opportunity. It is the decision. Remember this. Silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is the heartbeat behind all things. And perhaps, just perhaps, it is in silence that you will finally find the answer you have always been searching for.